All right. Well, so welcome to another episode of Sit Down by the Fire. Today we have Adam
Oh, I,
Marcus.
I didn't know you wanted me to introduce. Yes, Adam Marcus. That's me. That is
Yes,
me.
the director of Jason Goes to Hell and Se- Secret Santa and a few other movies. But why don't you kind of tell a bit of the Friday the 13th story on how you got the job because it's a very fascinating story, So before,
Awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah, what happened was I was 8 years old and met this kid named Noel on the playground, and him and I became fast friends and ultimately best friends. And after a while, there were whisperings around the playground about how Noel's dad made a porno movie. Which is a true thing, actually.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So, and then and then there was a rumor about Noel played the love child of Marilyn Chambers, who also grew up in my hometown of Westport, Connecticut. And Sean discovered Marilyn for the film Together. And then I started hearing about other films that this man made that weren't pornography, but were straight movies and horror films and comedies and other stuff. And I got really excited because I was completely interested. By the time I was 9 years old, my whole life was about movies. And so I started to pursue Sean to teach me everything he could about movies and about making movies. And so when they were making Friday the 13th, I was a fixture in their household. And then, I was doing, table reads of Wes Craven scripts for Wes and hanging out with Steve Miner and hanging out with Tom Savini. And, this was just sort of life. This wasn't like a special thing. This was just a thing. This was just the way it was. And so I apprentice edited on my first feature when I was 13 for Susan Cunningham, who, God rest her soul, but amazing human being. She was like a second mother to me. And Susan was a brilliant editor, and she was cutting. She had just cut Friday the 13th Part 2, which is, by the way, brilliantly cut movie and probably my second favorite of the entire franchise. Anyway, she was working on a movie called Spring Break, which is entirely the most inappropriate movie for a 13-year-old boy to be apprentice editing on. I love to say that I walked into the editing room a boy and came out a man. I chose most of the soundtrack for that film. I was a huge fan of Cheap Trick. Susan asked me who I thought should perform the theme song of the movie, who should be hired to do the theme song of the movie. And I said, I love Cheap Trick. And she said, okay, great idea. And next day they called Cheap Trick, and Cheap Trick was in the studio weeks later to record I Want a Spring Break. And so we worked on that film. And then when I was 15, I started my first of two theater companies that I had created. And Sean was very instrumental in helping me with that and really working with me on that, which was amazing. And I then took the money that I made from that theater company, and I lived in a town where you could actually make money with theater, which was extraordinary. And I went to NYU Film School, studied there in the Tisch School of the Arts, and I ended up winning Best Picture for a comedy that I made, which was sort of a John Hughes meets David Mamet style teen comedy. Which, by the way, starred, interestingly enough, Joe Lo Truglio from Brooklyn Nine-Nine fame, and Thomas Lennon from Reno 911 fame. Those guys were those were my buds growing up, and Kerry Kenny was one of my closest friends to were little kids. So I knew everybody in the state, and so all of them ended up in the film. And the movie won Best Picture, and Sean noticed that pretty quickly. And I got two job offers straight out of the award season for that movie. One was from David Lynch and Mark Frost to come and write for season 2 of Twin Peaks, to be in the writer's room. And the other was from Sean Cunningham, who said, come to Los Angeles, be my bitch for a year, and I'll give you your shot. And so I packed up my bags and paid off all my student debt. And I had just turned 21 when I landed in Los Angeles to work for Sean. No driver's license and $300 in my pocket.
There you go.
And that's how it started. That's literally how it began. I did have a screenplay for a terrific movie that I love the script. I'd been workshopping it with my closest friend in college, Dean Laurie, a movie called Johnny Zombie, and that was the movie I wanted to direct. And I kind of snookered Sean into reading it. What I did was I got Roger Corman's company interested in the movie by crashing a charity event and dancing with his wife and pitching her the movie on the dance floor. And she loved the idea, said, send me a copy of it. I made sure Noel knew that information. Noel, of course, I knew would immediately tell his dad. Next day, Sean saw me making a photocopy of the script in the office and said, what's that? And I said, it's a movie I want to make. He goes, give it to me. He grabs it off my desk, walks into his office, slams the door. And about 90 minutes later, he yelled, Marcus! And I run into his office thinking I need to get his lunch order. And he says, okay, so I hate this script, but I love the title. So I'm going to give you $1.5 million and you go shoot it in Connecticut. And I was like, what are we going to do now? And he said, but we're going to fire this writer and I'm going to get you a real writer. And I said, then I'm not going to do it with you. And he was like, what? I mean, you just offered me $1.5 million to make my feature film debut. And I was like, I'm not going to fuck my friend. Like, that's not going to happen. And by the way, that moment should have told me a lot. That moment should have really like raised more than just my eyebrow. But I said to Sean, I said, look, I said, Dean's an amazing writer. Trust me on this. If you bring him out here, put him and I up in the worst, shittiest hotel you can find for 6 weeks and let us rewrite the script. We'll do whatever you want to it. But give him the chance to do the work. And Sean went for it. And he flew Dean out. He sent the two of us to the Robert McKee 30-hour over 3 days seminar, which almost broke us, and then put us up in the Holiday Inn on the 405 in Sunset. And we spent the next 6 weeks retooling the script. And at the end of it, Sean was so in love with the movie that he was like, this is a bigger movie. We're going to try to get a studio attached.
Right.
And so because of my theater background and because of Sean's theater background, Sean was a Broadway stage manager for things like Wait Until Dark. The two of us put together a cast for a reading of the script. And we had these incredible New York casting directors, really amazing, Barry Hughes and Julie Hughes and Barry Moss, and their associate David Giella in LA. And so I had several Tony Award winners around this table for this table read. And sitting directly across from me, was a guy that I had lived next to for 3.5 years at NYU. Adam Sandler played Johnny Zombie.
Wow.
And so there we are at this table. Guys, I'm telling you, I mean, I had Charlotte Rae, Mrs. Garrett from The Facts of Life, playing a role in this thing. I mean, it was the most unbelievable table read you ever saw. And the reason that we did this was because Sean was always complaining how executives don't read scripts. They just don't read. They have somebody else write a book report and give them the book report. And depending on the book report, they'll either look at it or they won't. And so I said, well, why don't we cut out the middleman? Why don't we cut out the college grad who's going to hate our script no matter what? Because it's not, it's not a college grad movie. And let's cut that person out and let's actually read the script for them.
Right.
To make it easy on them. So we assembled this cast and we invited studios to a table read. And it was amazing how many people showed up. It was actually kind of extraordinary. And the movie ended up in a battle between New Line and Disney. And I begged Sean to go with New Line. I begged him. I'm like, they'll get this movie. This is a hard R horror comedy musical. They'll get it. And Sean went with Disney because they offered him 3 times the money. Which I get. I get it. Of course, they made a shit movie. So it's like, okay, you made something that's not good enough. I mean, it's fine if you're 9 years old. It's fine. Like for kids who grew up with that movie, they love that movie, and that's great. And I love that they love it. But I know what the movie was. I know what that script was, and it was extraordinary. And it was extraordinary enough to get two studios to fight over it and to get Sean Cunningham to spend money to put Dean and I up in a hotel. And let me tell you something, Sean Cunningham doesn't spend money. So for him to spend $1 means something really special is there. And so Disney was going to do it for $8.5 million. And there was no way they were going to let a 21-year-old direct that movie. It was not going to happen. Where New Line would have spent $3 million and I would have directed the movie. Right. So that didn't happen. And I walked into Sean's office and said, hey, dude, you owe me a movie. Mm-hmm. I just made you a shit ton of money. Where's my movie? And he said, well, New Line is buying Jason Voorhees from Paramount. Mm-hmm. And if you can figure out a way to get that fucking hockey mask out of the movie, I'll let you write and direct it. By the way, if I sound like the Penguin, the supervillain, the Penguin, when I'm doing my Sean Cunningham impression, it's because Sean Cunningham is the supervillain, the Penguin. Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh yeah, whatever, dude, done, awesome. Oh my God, Friday the 13th movie, and I'm running down the hallway, and suddenly it hits me. I'm like, I gotta take the what out of the what now?
Yeah.
But you know what? That was the order. And so I go, okay, cool. I'll do that. And 3 days later, I came back with what was the original treatment for a movie called Friday the 13th, The Heart of Darkness. And that was the original title of the movie and the original log line. And it was really, Tommy Jarvis was the hero of the movie. Mm-hmm. It was all about Tommy, but we couldn't have Tommy because New Line didn't buy Tommy. New Line bought Jason Voorhees and the elements in the first movie. Mm-hmm. They didn't even buy the title. So it's why the movie's called Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. It could not be called Friday the 13th, right. Which, by the way, was a blessing because, for the love of God, I don't need part 9 on my first feature film. So I was thrilled to have the title we had. But it sucked that I couldn't have Tommy Jarvis and more of the lore because I always see Jason Goes to Hell as a sister film to Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, which is my favorite Friday the 13th film. And Tommy McLaughlin and I are very close friends. And that would have been the movie I would want this to be as mostly associated with. So that, I wanted it to be, a direct sequel to that movie. So that's how Jason Goes to Hell happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, your story, I want to see your Meet the Fablemans movie now. Because,
we do. I will say this. It's not Fablemans that I would love to make that movie. But we do have the documentary. We literally, I was just on the phone all morning. We are color timing and doing the final sound design for the film. We're almost done. With The Hearts of Darkness, the making of The Final Friday. So we are just about done with that film right now. So yeah, it's we're closing up on it right this moment.
Anyway, question number 1: Who were some of the directors that inspired you to become a picture maker?
Ooh. Okay, so I have a story much like most of the people of my age, and it's great that we all have sort of a shared experience on this, but as I mentioned before, I was 9 years old. I'm sitting in a movie theater with my dad. My dad had already seen the soon-to-be-mentioned film in New York on opening night. But he rushed from New York City, where he lived, to Connecticut, where my mom lived, to take my brother and I, and my brother Kip, who, of course, is in Jason Goes to Hell. Mm-hmm. And the two of us sat, alongside him on either side, watching the opening crawl of Star Wars come out. And not Episode 4, A New Hope, none of that bullshit. Star Wars, before they added all that nonsense. So that opening crawl, goes over my head, which was I was already captivated. I mean, that the opening trumpets of that score, just forget about it. But the minute you see the Tantive 4 go overhead. I was, and then the Star Destroyer, and I just I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I just couldn't believe it.
Right.
And I said out loud, and my father heard me. I said, I want to do that. And my dad, because I was 9, thought I wanted to be an astronaut. And I said, no, I want to make that. And I have literally not spent one day of my life since that time not in the entertainment industry or heading towards making movies. So while George Lucas would never be a director that I would follow for my work as a director, George Lucas is one of the greatest producers of all time, and as a director, he's an excellent producer. But for me, the inspirations for me are varied and a little weird. Spielberg, of course, and honestly, I find when people minimize Spielberg, when anyone ever minimizes Spielberg, or denigrates anything, I just go, oh, so you actually have a giant crush on Spielberg, and you're ashamed of it, like you're having a shame thing. Because the truth is that Steven Spielberg is the single greatest ever director of motion pictures. That's it. Like, and I will go to the mattresses with anybody on this. And by the way, I love Kubrick. I love Carpenter. There's so many people that I adore, but he is the GOAT. He just is. And he's tackled every genre. He's done a beautiful job in every genre. That doesn't mean he hasn't made some movies that are duds, but his duds are beloved. Like the movies that he made that for my money, I'm not a fan of. Like, talk to somebody who was a kid when Hook came out, and they will hit you with their skateboard and their hairspray before they let you denigrate that movie. Now, I'm not a fan of Hook, but I still see the genius of it. I still see the cinematic. And by the way, the only reason Spielberg is what he is because he's never lost the child in him that's sitting in the 5th row center going, I want to do that.
Right.
He's that kid. There's a joyful little kid in him. When people go, he's manipulative, I'm like, no, he's emotional. He's getting excited about what he's doing. At 70, this man is more exuberant about the movies he's making than a 30-year-old. He just is. He's still a child on set going, all of these toys? I get to play with all of these toys? Right. And he also understands acting. So Spielberg is definitely, a serious influence on me. Bob Fosse is my true hero. I was raised a theater kid. I was a musical theater director and choreographer for many years. And All That Jazz is my absolute favorite movie of all time.
Right.
Alan Parker is my cinematic hero. And it's funny because he's one of those directors that most people today will go, who? And part of that is why I love him, and it's also why I love Spielberg. Parker defied genre, but you always knew it was an Alan Parker movie.
Right. I think that I do agree. Spielberg, he always has that quality of him where, like, he's going to be 80 in the next couple of years.
Yeah, he is.
And, still his movies have that child sense of wonder. Bob Fosse, a very good choice. Roy Schneider is very good in that movie. So
good. Good.
And so, but anyway, question number 2, assuming you can talk about, do you have any ideas for Part 13?
I do. I think that, and by the way, it's sort of what I wanted to do originally, but wasn't allowed to. But I will say, I would make a Predator style movie of mercenaries hired to go get Jason in the woods of Crystal Lake. I would do, sort of First Blood Predator style film of the badasses, and I would have, you know, Creighton Duke with his back brace, and Tommy Jarvis going into the woods with a team of the, you know, the most Schwarzenegger-y guys you could find and gals to go kill, you know, do aliens in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah,
cool.
that would be kind of cool. Maybe even have Creighton Duke have like in the James Bond movie, World Is Not Enough, where he has the shotgun cane, you know, too.
Yeah,
and,
that would be awesome.
And if you're gonna get a female though, you got to get Cynthia Rothrock.
Oh, that would be actually hilarious.
Yeah,
hilarious. Look, I mean, I just think that there's look, one of the things that I'm proudest about of Jason Goes to Hell is that the opening of the film announces a little bit of logic and says, if someone had killed over 130 people in those woods in a decade, the FBI would be involved.
Yes.
I mean, I love this notion that no one ever brings in federal authorities to deal with their Jason problem. It's fucking ridiculous. And and by the way, it's this constant, and it is a theme from Sean Cunningham to Studio Logic, and not New Line. New Line embraced what I was trying to do immediately.
Right.
Like, they got it. It's this idea that, oh, the kids are stupid. They don't know. All they want is tits and gore. And by the way, there is a crowd of people that is all they want. I mean, the people who come after me about Jason Goes to Hell relentlessly, I'm like, okay, what's the issue? What's the issue, kids?
I mean, a lot of the criticism, I'm not bashing anybody here who doesn't likes the movie or dislikes the movie, but what I love is how people always sit there, like, a lot of their complaints about it are more just like nitpicks, really. It's like,
they really are. They really are.
I'm like, nitpicking is like the worst form of criticism, really. I mean,
well, by the way, calling it the Jason movie that Jason isn't in is just a freaking lie. That's not true.
Yeah,
it's a Jason movie with more Jason in it than any other film, except he's not wearing the hockey mask the whole time. Yeah. I'm sorry. I gave you my interpretation of what if Jason was the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I like it, because
thank you.
Especially if you go on a Friday the 13th marathon, it's nice to see something different.
It is.
It is. Because in the words of Joe Bob Briggs, they made the same movie 8 times.
8 times.
That's
and that's on top of that. You know, like, look, I get it. The hockey mask is iconic.
Right.
But if you want to see him wearing the hockey mask, like, for the majority of the movie, you have like 7. Six other movies. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I guess
you need to go back to first grade.
Where he was wearing the iconic hockey mask.
Right. And by the way, a hockey mask that the creator of the franchise hated. He hated that mask.
Right.
And so much so he told me to get rid of it.
Right.
And the reasoning behind that, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, Sean never saw an idea that made money that he wasn't willing to steal. Okay? So when he made Friday the 13th, he's like, I know what we'll do. I'm going to do Halloween, but I'm going to get that guy who just did Dawn of the Dead, because everybody's freaking out about those effects. So I'll get that guy.
Right.
And I'll make the goriest movie I can possibly make. And, oh, you know what? That ending of Carrie was really good. We'll take that ending.
Yeah.
Okay? That's Sean. That's pure, unadulterated, uncut Cunningham. Okay? The thing is, just like Carpenter didn't want to make Michael Myers movies. Carpenter wanted to make Tales of Halloween. He wanted to tell stories about Halloween. Right. He was great with doing Halloween too, just not about Michael Myers.
Right.
I told one about the Boogeyman. Now let me tell a different story. And it's why Halloween 3 is the only true John Carpenter sequel of the entire Halloween franchise. Because the only movie that did what he wanted it to do. I mean, regardless, they needed more money for that movie. That's the problem. That's the biggest problem.
Right.
But Sean wanted to tell stories of Friday the 13th, of the unluckiest day of the year. That was the thing. And by the way, if you want to hear cynical, Sean's son, Noel, was born on Friday the 13th.
No way.
That is a true story.
Wow.
By the way, June 13th, 1980 was Noel's birthday, and at 11 years old, we all had a birthday party where we showed that movie while it was in theaters.
Wow.
To our 11-year-old friends. Yes.
What's funny is always. Go ahead.
He made a franchise after his son's birthday and called it the unluckiest day of the year.
Wow.
So you get to get a little more in the mind of Sean Cunningham at that point. But here's the thing. He made this movie about a mother who's murdering counselors 30 years later for the death of her child, the wrongful death of her child, and she's still blaming. So he made a potboiler. He made an Agatha Christie movie with gore about a mom, right? And when they went to make the second movie, he went, great, we'll tell another unlucky tale. And they went, well, why don't we tell a story about the boy in the lake? Mm-hmm. And he's like, what? They say, yeah, like Jason. Why don't we do Jason?
Yeah.
And he said, you mean the kid who drowned 30 years ago? What? And Sean wouldn't do it. Sean walked away. He said, yeah, my protege Steve can direct that piece of crap, and my wife will cut it. Bye. I'm gonna go make other movies. Right. So he had no interest. When they showed him the sack, because he had to be consulted, they showed him the sack. He went, wait, you're doing Elephant Man, the horror movie? It's literally what he said. Then they showed him the Hockey Mask Part 3. And he went, this movie takes place in the summer, right? They're like, yeah. It's a hockey mask. Yeah. He says, Jesus, I thought the sack was stupid. That was Sean's reaction to the hockey mask, okay? Right. By the way, by the time I started working with Sean, the only movies he could get made were Friday the 13th movies. Mm-hmm. Sean only made one. Sean only made the first movie. That's it. My movie is the second Friday the 13th film that Sean Cunningham was a producer of.
Right.
So, you know the story of the man in the iron mask? Sean Cunningham is the man in the resin mask. He is. He couldn't get away from it. And all he was known for at that point. And by the way, you know, Sean did make the House franchise. Like, he produced that franchise, which started as a great franchise. It went all to hell once they got the horror show. Yeah, but he could make movies. He was a terrible director. Sean's a terrible director.
Yeah.
That first movie is as slow and plodding and leaden as it comes. It's only great because of all the other people around him. The cinematography is beautiful. The music's fantastic. I mean, there's all these great elements, but it's not Sean's doing. Right. Sean's doing as a producer, yes. Sean is an excellent line producer. When a director needs something on set, it is there for you. I mean, he is that guy. No, not emotional support of any kind. But if you need shit to get the day done, it's there for you. Right. So Sean's very good at that. But no, he doesn't have a passion for these movies. The other problem, the other thing with Jason Goes to Hell, and why it's annoying when people are so entrenched in their hatred of it. And by the way, anyone can hate the movie. Cool. The movies are not made for everybody.
Exactly.
So, you know, we made a movie that all of us were very proud of, that we were excited about, that did tell a different story. But the other part of it is, as a kid, going to each Friday the 13th movie, and I was so close to these movies because, you know, I lived with these people. Each subsequent movie becomes more and more ridiculous. And I mean from horror logic. I don't mean from human being logic. That would be idiotic. Right. But guys, from part 1 to part 2, we see Jason at the end of part 1. He's played by 11-year-old Ari Lehman. I know this because I was in school with Ari. Right. So a little boy jumps out of the lake at the end of the movie. So in 1980, that kid is that size. 2 weeks later, he shows up at Alice's apartment. He's gained 160 pounds of body weight. He wears clothes that fit him. He has somehow learned to read because the only way you could get an address at that time was the white pages. Right. And he's learned to drive because I don't think he walked through Crystal Lake into the next town carrying his mom's head with that face.
He used the force.
Right. And by the way, not only that, but for the people who love to go like, Jason can't talk, Jason can't, all these rules about Jason. Jason has an incredible sense of humor. That sense of humor is amazing because the dude not only went to Alice's house, but then he went, how do I kill her? Oh, I know. I'm going to take Mom's head and put it in the fridge. Wait for this. And when she goes to get milk for her coffee, she's going to find Mom's head. This is going to be hilarious. And remember, he's hiding while all of this happens. He's watching all. He's like, this is going to be great. It's going to be great. It's going to be so freaking funny.
Yeah.
That's Jason.
Yeah.
So my movie, by the way, by part 4, he's an indestructible force that nothing, and his head gets turned into hamburger meat. By part 6, he is literally resurrected Frankenstein's monster style, right?
Right.
And is now a full-on zombie. By part 7, he's fighting telekinetic girls. Part 8, he takes a boat ride and gets dissolved into his childlike self in the sewers of New York. By the way, I grew up in Manhattan and Connecticut, back and forth between Mom and Dad. And it's great that Friday the 13th Part 8 finally exposed the truth of New York sewers, that they are all filled with acid. Toxic acid is what's in the New York sewers. So thank God somebody finally told the truth of that story. What my movie did by introducing the Necronomicon and by introducing the idea that maybe his mother, who was so obsessed with getting her boy back, used the dark arts, used the Necronomicon to bring her son back from the dead. The idea that happens actually makes every other movie make sense. Right. And cinematic sense. It's suddenly, if Jason is woken at the bottom of Crystal Lake and he's terrified, he's still this little boy, even though he's part of the Evil Dead. And he doesn't have to be a Deadite. Oh my God. The people like the rules of a Deadite. Oh, great. He's a Revenant.
Right.
Okay. He's a big boss. Okay. Yeah. Now tell me where your rules can go. Suddenly, this kid is stuck there and terrified and cold in the darkness, doesn't know where the hell he is. And one of the first things he ever sees is his mother's head being chopped off by this woman. Well, that rage would make him tear free from the brambles of the bottom of the lake and attack Alice. And then I buy him adding 160 pounds of body weight in the neck. I buy all of it suddenly. And I go, great. So our movie was the first version of Rogue One. We were created to fill that 4-meter hole in the Death Star.
Exactly.
That's us. So I'll take that. Fine.
Yeah.
Pretty much,
Yeah. What advice would you give to aspiring directors out there right now?
Do not wait for the studio system to hand you a movie. It's not happening. So if you go by that rule of like the studios are not going to knock on your door. By the way, the studios are not interested in reading your screenplay. Mm-hmm. Agents are not interested in reading your screenplay. Other screenwriters are not interested in reading your screenplay. If you want to do something, if you want to make movies, if you want to be in this business, go make a movie. I mean, here's the thing. I had to make movies on Super 8 film, then on 16 millimeter, then on Super 16, which cost a shit ton of money just to buy the footage, just to have it processed. We used to have all kinds of camera equipment. You don't need any of that anymore. If I had this when I was a kid, I can't imagine the possibilities. I can't imagine. I would have been making epic features by the time I was 15 years old. I would have been doing it. Because you literally have an entire movie studio in your pocket. Every single person has one.
Oh, yeah.
You can shoot, write, cut, and distribute from this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And, there are a lot of, I say, and by the way, this is about our business as well. I say there are two types of people. There are people who talk about making movies, and there are people who make movies. Mm-hmm. And be the latter category. Our entire industry is held up by people going to lunch and talking about movies. Mm-hmm. It's what agents do. It's what studio executives do. It's what most filmmakers are relegated to doing. But if you have to tell a story, if stories are your life and that's what you need to do it. Here's the other thing. and it's what I tell my students, because I teach master classes in filmmaking at different colleges, but I also teach every week. I teach actors in my own studio, and what I tell all of them, and what I would tell every person out there that's interested in making movies, if there's anything in this world that you want to do as much as make movies, if there's anything in this world that you go, I'd be really happy doing that, go do that.
Exactly.
Don't do this, because this has to be an obsession. This has to be every waking moment of your life. And by the way, it's going to break your heart a lot. Look, I've had a career. I've had a career. I've made a lot of movies and made a lot of money and had, look, I had a #1 movie at the box office. I had a #2 movie at the box office. That is a rare club to be in.
Right.
So I've done all that. And I'm telling you, I have had 30 projects not go, like just before they were going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a conservative estimate. I have got scripts that are sold that I made money on, which is wonderful, at every single studio in town. Every shelf has a script of mine and my wife's. We're writing partners. And that's great. And I love making the money. Those movies will never get made. They're going to sit on shelves. They're just going to sit there.
Right.
And that is 98% of our business is that. When you actually get something made, that's winning the lottery. And I'm talking about the studio level. When it comes to, look, I mean, the reason why my wife and I decided to partner with our partner, Brian Sexton, who's my closest friend, and he's the single best producer I've ever worked with, and it's why we're partners. Why we joined forces in 2015 was because I went to see a screening of Texas Chainsaw 3D. Deb and I were invited at Lionsgate. This is about a month before the movie came out. And Lionsgate was over the moon about the movie. Like, they couldn't have been more excited, more happy. They were thrilled. And Deb and I sat there and watched a movie that had things like, people picking up a hitchhiker in the mid-90s. And a smartphone inserted into our movie that takes place in 1993. I know it's 1993 because in the screenplay, Jason Goes to Hell is playing at the movie theater in the town square. I had a movie where people said things like, do your thing, cuz. And where a young Latina girl from Chicago is saying to someone in Texas, welcome to Texas, motherfuckers. And my wife and I went, they're going to blame us for all of this bullshit. They're going to blame us. We're the writers. That's who everybody blames. Well, the script was the problem. No, the script wasn't a problem. I know that. Deb and I got hired for 5 other studio jobs off of that screenplay. That script was rock freaking solid. Toby Hooper called us at home to tell us this is the first true sequel to my original film. And I said, dude, you made Texas Chainsaw 2. He goes, I know, I'm including that.
Wow.
Right.
That's a
lot.
That's quite an accomplishment. So there.
So when you're sitting in a theater watching, a director who was, who's a good director. John's a good guy and a good director, but he wasn't a horror movie director.
Right.
He made Takers, and suddenly he's doing this. So it's like, wait, right. Why? What? And a producer who shall remain nameless, who was the single most shameless person we ever worked with, coming in and putting their fingerprints on a movie that you're like, wait a minute, don't touch the script, man. Like, leave the script alone. Let the script be the script. Mm-hmm. The problem is he had lost half his funding, and he had to make the movie for half as much money, and it was still a 3D movie. It was written as a 3D movie. So suddenly he had to cut a ton of shit out of the movie. That sequence with the damn cell phone was one of the scariest scenes in the film, and it went along with my Predator notion, which was Leatherface in a hardware center, a la The Equalizer, and a whole squad of SWAT cops coming in to disarm Leatherface, and Leatherface is literally in his version of a candy store, and he mutilates this team of guys. And this is, before the end of Act 2. So they couldn't do any of that stuff. So Dev and I watched this. We both became incredibly depressed. And by the way, the movie was #1 at the box office. Like, we wrote a #1 movie. It was great. But we walked away saying, this is for the fucking birds, man. I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're going to keep getting blamed for shit that we didn't do. And yeah, the money is great. That's great. But at some point you go, I didn't get into this for the money, because, by the way, don't anyone ever get in the film business for the money. Just don't. Okay? That group of people you see at the Academy Awards, that is less than half of 1% of us.
Oh.
So those are the people with the money. The rest of us, we're lucky if we get the crumbs. It's why we were on strike for 8 months. But we get into it for the art and for the love of movies and for the love of doing it. And we stopped doing that. And that's why, we went and made Secret Santa. And Secret Santa was made for $30,000. And by the way, it's a union movie. And it was made for $30 grand.
Wow.
Because you can do that. You can make movies like that are union, that are super cheap, that you bring really talented artists together to make incredible stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I actually enjoyed Secret Santa quite a bit. I thought,
thank you.
I got a pretty big, backbone when it comes to things. So, like, I kind of found a lot of just fun, very funny. I loved your slogan that you came up with for the movie. So,
thank you.
I mean, so, like, because for those who didn't see it, it's basically when you get older, Christmas kind of loses the magic when you're a kid. You have to. It's one of those cases. You love your family, but and then you basically, this whole family, who's really, just decides to basically go all out and kill each other towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, definitely. And to add up on what Adam said, if you're gonna do it only for the money, well, then you really truly are doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, you should do it because you genuinely love to entertain people.
Absolutely.
Genuinely love to do it.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Question number 4. You have quite a long history in your family of actors who are in the industry. Why don't you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, I was born and raised in a family of mostly artists, mostly people who worked on stage for the most part, and then a number of movie folks. So my grandmother was a performer, a singer from a very early age through to a late age in her life. My mother was a professional singer and, in fact, would sell out stadiums all through Europe. I mean, she was quite brilliant. My brother Kip, of course, was Kip Cleaver on the new Leave It to Beaver. And he's been on Broadway a couple of times. He played Marius in Les Mis on Broadway. He was also one of the Fagans boys in the Patti LuPone, Ron Moody remake of Oliver on Broadway when we were kids. But the most famous people in my family are, infamous in some ways. Joe Ellison, who was one of my uncles, who wrote, produced, and directed Don't Go in the House, which is one of the first Don't movies. It's also the movie. There's an incredible, it makes me so happy. There's this great double bill of Friday the 13th and Don't Go in the House in Times Square. And literally both are on the same billboard. It's kind of amazing. So he made that film, which is somewhat legendary. And then a man that we lost 2 years ago, who was truly my closest hero, was Ned Eisenberg, my uncle Ned Eisenberg, who is that guy. So you can't show a picture of Uncle Nettie to somebody and they don't go, oh, I don't know that. Everybody goes, oh, that guy, I love that guy.
Right.
Nobody knows his name, but from every third episode of Law and Order to The Equalizer to Miami Vice but most specifically The Burning. He's Eddie in The Burning. So I always love that, because he's the one who gets the girl in the water, and they have that whole sort of very early rapey scene. It's very rapey. By the way, it's always interesting that Harvey Weinstein, it's the first Miramax movie, The Burning, the very first, and it's the only movie Harvey Weinstein ever wrote. And it literally has like 4 guys trying to rape 4 women in that movie. It's incredible. My uncle is the guy in the water. So the poster image that's on the image that's on the poster is my uncle, who, by the way, played Italians his entire career. He's Jewish, but he plays Italians. The guy on the poster is this blonde, hunky, muscly guy. Ned was like a skinny, tall, Italian-looking dude.
Right.
I'm always like, dude, that poster really did you justice, brother. You're gonna be very proud of that one. He also he's in the movie Moving Violations, which this is just a personal favorite of mine, because he plays the horror geek in the movie, the guy who loves horror movies. If you've never seen Moving Violations, it's really funny Police Academy style movie made by the people who made Police Academy. But also, Last Man Standing, it's him, Chris Walken, and Bruce Willis. Those are the 3 leads of the movie. So
right.
Ned's that guy, man. And the number of things he's been in and appeared in was legendary.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So he has you have a long history when it comes to people in the industry, I think.
Definitely, yeah.
So, and
by the way, the town that I grew up in, Westport, Connecticut, what's extraordinary about it is it's kind of the Beverly Hills of the East Coast. Even though my family was not rich, we were sort of the, there were a few, lower middle class families that lived in Westport. We were one of them. But I lived right down the road from Paul Newman. And, I sang at Martha Stewart's house for Christmas every year. And Neil Simon lived in town. The Weinsteins lived in Westport. It was this bastion of, it's 40 miles outside of New York City. So everybody who was New York based from the film community would all live in Westport.
Right.
Tom Cruise lived there. Robert Redford lived there. I was doing play readings. By the time I was 11 years old, I was doing play readings with Keir DeLay and Sandy Dennis. So, I was, and again, by the way, it's so funny. I never wanted to sound like, 1, pretentious, or 2, like it's like, oh, he's bragging about them. No, this was just our town.
Yeah.
And like Paul Newman had a rule: never ask him for an autograph, but if you just treat him as a neighbor, he's happy to hang out with you. Right. And Paul and Joanne were both wonderful to us. Like they were just nice neighbors. They were just cool people who wanted to talk about the lawn. They didn't want to talk about movies. They didn't want to talk about their work. They weren't at work. They were at home.
Yeah.
And as long as you were just, a good person and a good neighbor, they were thrilled to be your neighbor.
So when you're another question. When your Meet the Fablemans movie comes,
yes,
who should play Sean?
Well, if the devil's not available, I mean, sadly, Val Kilmer won't be available, so there's that. I gotta tell you, I mean, here's the funny thing. Sean is actually kind of an attractive dude. He's very, very short. Sean is tiny.
Yeah,
Sean's about 5'3".
Okay, I was gonna say, according to he's like 5'6", but
that is a lie. Yeah. That is a lie. That's when he wears his heels. If he's out at a gala, I'm sure. Sean is a tiny little man. And by the way, even though Napoleon wasn't a tiny little man, he does have Napoleon syndrome. Sean, look, I mean, the problem is you could say a Danny DeVito, but the problem is that Danny DeVito is really nice. Like, he's a nice guy, and he could play a prick.
Of course.
Look, here's the thing about Sean. I am very grateful to this day, and I say it all the time. I am very grateful that this man gave me my start. I don't want to sound like an ingrate for that. I'm not. Right. I do respect that. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you something. It's really great when someone gives you your break, but then emotionally terrorizes you every single day that you're working.
Right.
That's not the way to do it. Like, it's not the way to do it. And it's really sad because Sean was like a dad to me growing up. He really was. He was, you know, a slightly abusive dad, but a dad. And ribbing is fine. Joking around is great. That's great.
Right.
There was a level of bullying every time I'd walk into their house with Dean. Dean and I would walk into their house. He would play Garth Brooks's I Got Friends in Low Places every time we walked in the house. Now, the first couple times, it's funny. The 9th time, it's like, this isn't funny. You mean it. Like, you're saying something. And by the way, that's nothing. That's tiny. What I'm saying is there is a denigrating nature to the relationship that, and by the way, when I finally told him to fuck himself, and I told him, I dared him to fire me, which he never did. I dared him to fire me 4 days before the end of the shoot because he was abusing my cinematographer.
Yeah.
And I went, not on my set. And it was like, what? And I was like, that's right, my set. And if you don't like it, fire my ass. And he didn't.
Wow.
He didn't. He left. He left the building. He's a bully, and he can't stand other bullies. He can't, by the way, which is the only way to ever get rid of a bully.
Right.
You have to out-bully them and make them see like, oh shit, and then they immediately squeak away like the little rat they are.
Oh.
And that's the problem. It's not, you know, it's not as a filmmaker, it's none of that stuff. Because again, I think he's an incredible producer. And I think he's had some great moments of having some good taste. But he does not. There is a dark side to this guy that is far more than just bullying that I can't get into legally. I can't get into it. But there is stuff that this guy has done that is criminal. That's something, in my opinion.
Yeah, I am definitely sorry to hear that Sean was that way.
Yeah.
It's a real shame. I mean, it's a shame that you had to put up with him. It's a shame that other people had to put up with him. I mean, of course, no one's perfect. All of us have our flaws. I mean, some of us have, I guess you could argue that some people have more pros and cons and vice versa. But yeah, it seems to me that he had a lot of issues, and it seems to me that he, you know, I do want to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Sure, absolutely.
But yeah, and I don't want to have this be like a bash Sean S. Cunningham.
Oh God, no, by no means.
Yeah,
definitely not. But yeah, I will say this: I definitely hope that he gets the help that he needs.
I don't disagree with you, and I've wanted that for him since we parted ways.
Well, Eric, we haven't even got we're all talking and everything, and we're definitely going to be probably going over an hour. So
that's fine. I'm here, guys. I'm with you.
Anyway,
I don't have anywhere I got to be until like 7.
Yeah.
And
So anyway,
it's too. It's almost 3 p.m. And so yeah.
So anyway, if this is interesting transition here, but if you've what have you really heard, if you can talk about the whole part 13, like if you nothing.
I got to tell you, look, you have to remember Sean, when he made the first movie, and this is to his credit, when he made the first movie, he didn't have a movie. He lied. He put a thing in Variety, full page ad about this movie coming, about the the most terrifying night of the year. And he didn't have money, and he didn't have a movie. So Sean is one of those guys who's very good at telling you he's doing a thing, and then you go, great, who's doing it? Well, we don't know yet, but it's happening. And by the way, he wills it into being. And that is again, great producer. Like, that's great producer.
Well,
so I don't know if there's a part 13.
Yeah. I mean, last I've heard, it's like a prequel or something with the mommy.
Well, that would be a mistake because that's what the television series is going to be.
Yeah. So
I think that would be an enormous mistake to do a prequel. Even though I will tell you, I don't know if you guys saw Saw X.
Yes,
but,
I did.
Well, for my money, I think it's the best Saw movie that's been made. I really do. I think it's a terrific film. I think that they got the best actor in that franchise and went, why don't we actually let him have a movie? Like really give him a movie. And Tobin Bell did an extraordinary job in that movie. Like it's just a terrific film. I was like, okay, I really had written these movies off. Like I'm done. I can't. It's torture porn, and I can't do it anymore. And they went off and made a really cool, prequel. And I'm not a big fan of prequels. And I was like, this is great. Like I'm all in. So I'm all for prequels if they can work. The problem is that if you're going to tell Pamela's story, which I'm totally, by the way, have any of you read the comic book Pamela's story?
I have not.
I did. I liked it.
I loved it. I was like, okay, please give me this movie. It's almost like Bates Motel. Like you're getting to really get in the psychology of this woman who loves this little boy, this hydrocephalic headed little boy. I mean, it's kind of amazing. And so for my money, I think that's a story to tell. I think Victor Miller is going to be telling that story on Peacock, and God bless it. For me, I would hope Part 13 would look forward, not back.
Right.
And by the way, I would also hope that they wouldn't stay too long at the table. Because, the last thing we need is another, trilogy of films based on IP from the 70s that just makes the fans go, what? Why? So that you can have a cash grab. This cash grab thing, look, I get it. It's a studio. Studios need to make money. I totally understand it.
Right.
But at some point, you have to have some artistic integrity because, look, I find it amazing. And again, just so you know, I tend never to bash other filmmakers. I won't do it. I have a personal issue with Sean, which is why I'll talk about it.
Right. Yes.
And because I don't believe bullies should be allowed to get away with their shit.
Right.
I'm not okay with that. But the truth is, I don't think there's been enough anger over the latest Exorcist movie. I don't. And I got to tell you, William Friedkin vowing to come back from the dead to haunt David Gordon Green, which he did. He actually said that, is fitting. Because at some point, are we going to stop fucking with these great films? Like, why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? I get Friday the 13th, Part 13. I get it. And close it out, like really give us an ending. I think that's great. But this constant repetition, we have to start making new movies. We have to start creating new franchises.
Yes. Well, Eric here has a pretty good movie that could be a franchise too. Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about Dumb of the Dead?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I remember when I was a senior in high school, I used to help out with a charity called Zombies on Montana. Like it was a charity where we would raise funds for cancer, but it was all horror themed.
Right.
And then what I remember that the president approached me and she was like, "Hey, I'm good friends with Tim Quill, who was in Army of Darkness and a lot of the Sam Raimi movies." And and Tim said that he would want somebody to write him a zombie script, and I was wondering if you would want to do it. I was like, "Yeah, great." I instantly said yes. It's because yes is what I want to do.
Yeah.
But kind of the whole thing, with Sean, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do because there have been so many zombie movies where I feel like at this point you really had to do something new, which is basically kind of like what you experienced, with Friday the 13th. There have been so many of them. I want to do something different, and then I thought of the idea because one day I was bored and I was just wanting a laugh, so I popped in Beavis the Butthead, and I thought, hey, wouldn't it be hilarious if I had two Beavis the Butthead like characters fighting against zombies?
It's great.
And I was like, great, that's my concept. And so I had my concept, but I couldn't really come up with a plot. And then, some personal things happened in my life. I lost somebody like who I
Sorry, dude.
dearly loved. I do appreciate that. So, and then, you know, sometimes you may or may not agree. Sometimes I feel like tragedies really can change a person.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know,
Sure.
and yeah, and so I also do think that tragedies, like with tragedies, good things actually can you know, good things actually can come out from that. I feel like
Absolutely.
a really good example is how, you know, I get it. People get annoyed like by how strict airports are,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, it's to keep you safe.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and so I feel like that's an example. So and then
It's also a way to make a lot more money on water. But go on.
yeah, but anyway, so yeah, and so and then when that tragedy happened, like I was writing the script, and then before then it was just going to be some dumb road trip comedy about these two idiots fighting against zombies. But then when that tragedy happened, I went, okay, I'm gonna redo the entire script. Maybe keep a few elements here and there, but completely redo the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So and then I redid it, poured my heart and soul into it, and I was 21 at the time when I wrote that script.
Mm-hmm.
I was young, and I mean, of course, I wrote scripts before, but I never actually finished them.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first one that I actually finished, and then you know, I sent out the script to some friends of mine, and even Junebug here, and they all said, "Wow, you were 21 years old and you wrote a script that deep."
That's awesome.
Well, it really is I mean, the fact that he actually succeeded in making characters dumber than Beavis and Butthead.
That's excellent.
Saying a lot.
I was saying a lot.
That is excellent.
And so I think that honestly, when I was reading this, I'm like, dude, this could be a franchise where you put these characters in different scenarios. You know, like these guys go to jail or
the
hell.
Or
it's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
I mean, we even said the sequel should be the sequel should just get the space movie out of the way.
Absolutely.
We said the sequel we should just call it where they go to Uranus. You know.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
So, do you speaking of sequels? Do you have any ideas for a sequel for Secret Santa, like maybe the Easter Bunny or Thanksgiving?
We have a script. We have a treatment for a movie called Secret Santa 2 Hippity Hoppity, which takes place in a church, a wedding on Easter Sunday, and things go horribly wrong. So yes, and by the way, because it's in a church, it's that much more blasphemous and that much more
hey, as long as you can top the Kingsman church scene, you're good.
Oh, seriously. Yeah. Yes. No, it's we do have a sequel for Santa. But right now we've got a lot of movies we're making.
Right.
And going back to what we were talking about before about you know, creating new horror, I'm going to throw something out there that I think for young filmmakers and Eric, since you're a writer, this is something that I think would help. And by the way, I think your screenplay idea, or your screenplay, excuse me, is goes along with what I'm gonna be preaching here, which is, I think the big mistake that these movies are making in a big way. I don't mean the Halloween sequels or anything like that. I mean the new batch of horror films. I don't know when it got written that horror movies were not allowed to be fun anymore. There is a new ideology that permeates most of horror movie filmmaking that is dread-induced. Mm-hmm. Everything is so sad the minute we start. My entire family killed themselves. That's why it's a horror movie. Mm-hmm. All of the franchises that have lasted, all of them, that are really big hits, they do not start in dread. It doesn't happen. They start with a bunch of teenagers going off to go camping. Mm-hmm. They start with a fun idea of a party, there's an entertainment that's happening, and everybody's happy to go for a perfect example, the first Evil Dead movie. So the first Evil Dead movie, it's a bunch of college-age guys and gals go into a cabin to have sex. They're going to have sex. In Fede Alvarez's reboot, which, by the way, I think Fede is a really talented director. But in his reboot, he is doing a movie about an intervention. And I went, well, that's not fun. I don't want to be at that party. I don't want to be there.
Exactly.
If I don't want to be at the party, then why? Then how am I involved? How am I involved? I'm not there with you now. You've kept me out of it. And look, I love movies like The Witch. I love The Babadook. I love The Ring. I love some of these movies that are pure dread. I love them. I love Hereditary until the third act when it shits the bed. But I love that movie, right? There's so many of these things that I think are really extraordinary and beautiful. But they're not franchises.
Right.
And when they tried to make The Ring a franchise, nobody wanted to go.
Yeah.
Because, like, well, that's going to be a bummer. I don't want to go for a bummer. And the thing about Friday the 13th is that you always knew there's going to be a group of really dumb, attractive campers that are going to head out to Crystal Lake and do some shenanigans and get naked. There was always the promise of nudity.
Right.
That's gone. Like, they just don't do that in these movies anymore. And you're like, by the way, Jason Goes to Hell is the first Friday the 13th movie with as much male nudity as female nudity. So I was all about, we're doing this for the ladies too, or for the men that like male nudity. Like, go. Everybody should be able to enjoy themselves at this movie. So I'm all for equal opportunity nudity, but for the love of God, we're making fun movies. If you're not promising fun, why do I want to be there?
Yeah. Well, Eric also makes his own movies on his YouTube channel and everything.
I love it.
And I even told him I have an idea, because I'm more of the producer type.
Sure.
And I'm just, I told Eric I have an idea. Why don't you do something where change up the formula? Why is the goody girl always have to be the final girl? I want the promiscuous cheerleader to be the final girl.
I totally agree with you. Boy, do I agree with you.
Yeah, because and then you could even do it where the nerdy guy gets the girl at the end. Because movies.
Well, dude, I mean, I made a movie where there was a final boy, not a final girl.
Yeah. There you go.
Exactly.
And he is a nerd. He is the nerd.
Yeah, and so that was a great script too that he wrote too, and because I'm like, what just do something like that where it's okay to change up the formula, but do it in a way where it's fun,
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's because people don't want to see the same thing over and over again. It's kind of like how saying that you're going to eat the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Like, it may be nice for a while, but eventually you're going to be so tired. Like,
ice cream loses its flavor.
Yeah.
Like that cheeseburger sounds good every day, but sometimes you might want some chicken.
Exactly.
By the way, unless you're making a Friday the 13th movie, then you better make the exact same movie.
Right. Anyway, so besides Jason Goes to Hell and Secret Santa, what other movies would you like your fans of you to check out?
Well, the funny thing is, so horror movies have been the place where I've made the most money, which is lovely, and had success in that regards. That's great. And Secret Santa is a horror comedy, but Secret Santa is indicative of where I get my best reviews. My comedy work always seems to garner me the most praise. Secret Santa's pretty beloved movie, and again, it's the movie I'm the proudest of. And by the way, Screambox is streaming it exclusively, so they're amazing. But it's also, you can rent it or buy it on Amazon, on iTunes, on all of those services, which is awesome. And the people at Screambox are amazing. I absolutely love them.
Yes.
They're actual partners. But the thing about Secret Santa is that I'm a big physical media guy, like a big physical media guy.
Right.
And we made a Blu-ray of Secret Santa. In-house, we made a DVD and a Blu-ray of Secret Santa that are Skeleton Crew DVD and Blu-ray. And on that disc, there is a 77-minute documentary about the making of Secret Santa and about the forming of Skeleton Crew. And I am as proud of that documentary as I am of the movie itself. It is a feature-length documentary about our process and about what we did. And while Secret Santa is sort of the anti-family movie, like it's like the family as evil movie, the doc is what I really feel, which is the family you choose is your family. And that documentary, it's sort of this great yin-yang sort of thing on the disc of like this incredibly evil, effed up movie about family, and then this wonderful movie about the family you choose that's totally positive and awesome, called Naughty or Nice: The Making of Secret Santa. So you know, anyone who loves those kind of docs and loves that kind of stuff, you should really check out the physical media edition of Secret Santa, which you can get exclusively at secretsantathemovie.com/merch. And we have signed copies and signed posters, and it's freaking great. Anyway, so Secret Santa aside, I made my second feature film that I directed was a movie called Let It Snow. That was a huge Sundance hit, like huge.
Yeah.
And it was Bernadette Peters had been retired from filmmaking for 9 years. She came back to filmmaking because I asked her to. And because she loved this script and loved what we were doing. She had hated making movies prior to this. And she loved working with us and making this movie. So, but by the way, that movie, you know, started a ton of careers. Miriam Shore, Henry Simmons, Missy Pilot's her first movie. I mean, we had all these amazing actors that really started their career. Stephen Colbert is in Let It Snow. I mean, it's really like, it's a crazy sort of like Where's Waldo of movies. My Uncle Ned Eisenberg, of course, makes an appearance. And it's a romantic comedy told from the boy's point of view. So it's a rom-com that is purely about how the guy sees it. And my brother Kip is, you know, he's the lead of the movie. He wrote the film, and he's spectacular in it. So, and his wife, 30 years later, is the same woman that played his girlfriend in the movie. So yeah, and they have 6 kids now. So, you know, there you go. But yeah, that movie I'm particularly proud of. It's all over the place. Like, it plays on Tubi, it plays on Amazon Prime. It's all over the place. There is my movie Conspiracy, starring Val Kilmer. You can see the producer's cut of that movie around the different places. It is the Steven Seagal cut of the movie. Val Kilmer is the devil, and fuck him, and fuck his self-serving documentary, and fuck him. He sexually harassed actresses. He was late to set every single day. He was drunk and or high every day of the shoot, and I have no problem saying it because it's what happened. He physically assaulted me day 6 of the movie, kicked me in the nuts, and laid me out on the floor of our set. He is a terrible, terrible, terrible man. And how people are covering for him makes me so angry. I just can't believe it. I really cannot believe it.
I am so sorry that you had to go through all that. Ouch.
Yeah.
Frat boy bully. He's a frat boy bully. He is that guy. Yeah. And it's amazing. This is one of those examples of the town covers their own ass, because the number of actors, big name actors who I've talked to, and literally the words like "fuck that guy" come from like top stars, and they won't say it in public. And I'm like, well, then nothing ever changes, guys.
Yeah, your voice is more powerful than a blade or a bullet.
Right. And this idea that like he's sick now, and I'm sorry he's sick. Like, that's terrible. I feel bad for his family. That's terrible. But I'm sorry. That doesn't you getting sick doesn't erase what you did. You know, like I had actresses in tears on my set. where I'm yelling at him, go back to your trailer, leave her alone.
Yeah.
It's reprehensible. And no one does anything. No one does anything.
You know, I honestly just wonder, you need the people to speak up, like, even what you're doing with Val Kilmer and Sean even too. If people want the change, they're gonna have to speak up more.
Yeah.
Because it's what we mentioned Harvey Weinstein earlier. That was horrible, obviously.
Yeah.
But people spoke up, and look where he is now.
Right.
So,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, we have Me Too now, which by the way, is a powerful thing that should be used as a scalpel. I mean, the problem is a lot of people use it for the wrong thing, and that's terrible. Yeah. But it is powerful because there have been so many people who, by the way, not just in the film industry. This is the problem. Because the film industry is in our face, right? Because we're so visible, right, as a group.
Right.
It's very easy for people to go, well, like, oh, Hollywood's just infested with terrible people. No. Go to a podiatrist Chris convention. Half the people there are assholes. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in. The whole point is have a voice. Say something. If somebody does something horrible, you actually have to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I'm wanting to actually run a media company and I'm like, I want the little people to come to me if somebody's doing something to them, and then basically it's like when you were in school and you go to the principal's office, it's like, we're gonna have a talk with you, and if I hear something that somebody does, I don't care how big of a producer you are on set, if I hear that you're doing something horrible like what we hear about that goes on, I don't care about the money. Like, bye, fired. You're fired.
Yeah.
And. Yeah, so.
Yeah. So again, look, Conspiracy is a good little movie. A lot of people love that movie. I have a director's cut of that movie that's much closer to what the script was and what I intended with the movie, which is really a movie about PTSD and soldiers coming back with PTSD, and the nightmare of that and the terror of that. And then I wrapped it in a story, about immigration and about all kinds of stuff. And it was this very kind of cool political thriller with a lead character who is horribly damaged from the Iraq War. And so I was proud of the movie that we were making. And I was really excited when Val, look, that script was a first draft. It was the first draft. And our agent gave it to Val Kilmer because he repped both of us as at ICM. And Val immediately said, I want to make this movie. So literally the only rewrite I did of the movie was with Val. Mm-hmm. And we were ready to go. Like, we were going to make a really important, cool movie. And then he just stole the potential of what that movie was.
Right.
Because of his bad behavior in every direction possible. Mm-hmm. So, look, that aside, it's a movie worth checking out if you're into that kind of flick. I also did a movie called Momentum a few years ago, which was 20 years in the making. No joke. A movie that was that my wife and I wrote in 1995. It got optioned by every studio in town. I mean, every single studio had an option at some point. It was on the Blacklist, which is the best scripts in Hollywood not made. And like it had a tremendous amount of prestige. It didn't get made until 2015. But Olga Kurylenko, James Purefoy, Morgan Freeman, that's our cast. And it's a really cool little action movie. It's a movie that we're really proud of. Look, we've also ghost written several movies that we can't talk about. There's we've been very lucky and very blessed. And I never take that for granted. Like, it's really a rarefied thing. And it's funny, because of the Sean Cunningham connection, I've actually recently somebody called me a Nepo baby. I guess that's an insult of some kind. And I went, what? I'm not Sean Cunningham's kid. I was a friend of his kid. Like, that's not what? It's like no. We all have to work our asses off to get these careers. And by the way, like I also love the Nepo baby thing where I'm like, so you're saying that and sons should not be a thing? Like, if you're raised around entertainment, if you're raised around show business, you know show business better than other people know show. You've been raised around it. If your father is a dentist or your mom is a lawyer, you're going to know those worlds better than other people. You have a leg up in the understanding of those worlds. So I was very lucky in that I had an understanding of the worlds, but I will tell you, I started working professionally when I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
So for me to make my first feature, 12 years into my career, that's not an overnight thing. It appears to be, but we all have to make our path, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very lucky to have made a path that I worked with a lot of incredible people. The people that I work with now are the best people in the world. Like they are my favorite people, and they are my family. Skeleton Crew is a family. I mean, Bob Kurtzman and I have been working together ever since Jason Goes to Hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually producing his next film as director, which I'm producing it. My wife and I wrote it. And Brian Sexton and I and Deb are all putting this movie together called Hunting Season, which is Bigfoot meets Predator.
That's awesome.
And it is badass. Yeah.
I know if you don't have a star already, I know Jean-Claude Van Damme was going to do a Bigfoot movie back in the day. So you got to get Van Damme in it.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's actually amazing how many people love Bigfoot. Like how many actors are like Bigfoot like fanatics. And weird people that you're like, you like big, really? All right, cool. So it's kind of one of those things that in its own way, kind of helps you create it. Is that there's so many people inspired by it. Well, I'm doing a really cool movie called Fat Camp Massacre right now with this remarkable team of female producers and writers that are extraordinary. And that is a very freaking cool movie.
Yeah.
And that is for people of size what Get Out was for people of color. That's the way we're pressing the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an anti-bullying, anti-body dysmorphia movie.
There you go. So great. Actually, segue sort of. So let's say some independent directors or anything want to join Skeleton Crew. Can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We are always on the lookout for new ideas and new material. The thing about Skeleton Crew, so we have several tiers of the company. So there's sort of our more moderate to big budget films. Then there's our television division, and then there's the Where the Hell Did Roger Corman Go division of the company, and that's really about. I don't know why. I don't know where the Charlie Bands and Roger Cormans went. I don't know. Because look, there are too many people out there that have not had their voice heard. By the way, and I'm not just saying brand new people to the industry. Yes, we do work with those people. I mean, the writer of Fat Camp Massacre, the original writer who we've worked with to in collaboration. Lindsay Hollister is a fantastic actor. She's just a terrific actress, and you can look her up. She's amazing. But here's the thing. We're also bringing in people who are writers who have been writing for 35 years in the industry and have never been given a shot to direct. And the idea of the company is, and why I made Secret Santa for $30,000 is I go, great, you're going to have very little money to make your movie, but you're going to get to make your movie. So it's the Roger Corman thing. It's like you have a few days and a few dollars. Go make your movie.
That's one thing that I love hearing about, especially other YouTubers that you're doing something that's like, wow, that's awesome, because, and, I mean, Eric, you've made movies based on your most popular YouTube series. It's called Things That Piss Me Off. It's just like everyday things that piss you off. Money and stuff like that. And he made movies about it. Eric, the first one was about dinosaur deniers.
It was, and it's crazy to imagine that we live in a world where people deny that, but that's just the world that we live in.
and then why don't you tell him the premise for the other ones too?
So for the sequel, I didn't just want to make the same movie again, and so then what I did was that I asked my fans, okay, what would you want the sequel to be about? And then people said, oh, well, it was a tie. It was Jehovah's Witnesses and fast food restaurants. So I thought, okay, so why don't I make the plot be about how the reason why fast food workers are so incompetent is because the Jehovah's Witnesses have organized a huge worldwide mass conspiracy about it.
That's hilarious.
So yeah.
Yeah, so literally his whole series is basically how I pitch it to people is Monty Python meets South Park.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Thank you so much.
And so then the third one, which is still in production, I think you're editing it. You have some few shots you need to do, or
the third movie is almost done being filmed. I just gotta, film those last few scenes to film and then edit the movie.
Sure.
Yeah. The third movie is about cancel culture and the flat Earth, and I can't believe we're still debating the shape of the Earth too. But again. And yes, in Adam's face, I agree 100%. It's like we're taking huge steps backwards.
Here's the problem: you can't argue it's stupid.
Yes. Well, and I have to say, I'm admitting this. I stole your slogan for Secret Santa with love. I said if we don't offend you with this movie, we didn't do our job. So I stole it with love.
That's awesome. No, dude, and look, by the way, I believe in that so hard. There was a great moment. So Secret Santa is offensive in every way it could possibly be.
Oh, yeah.
And that's built by design because the people in the movie are horrible people. So they all need to die horribly. And that's the point of the movie. The movie isn't like, yay, horrible things. No, the movie is boo, horrible things. But in order to make that movie, you have to give voice to the horrible things. So you're going to sit in the audience, you're going to be offended. And so while the movie was playing at its first United Kingdom festival, by the way, that's my extraordinary wife and writing partner, Deborah, on her way out the door. Bye.
Making her cameo.
No worries. She's that is and again from Secret Santa, the lead of Secret Santa. So she plays Shari. The thing is that you have to give voice to those things so people are going to get offended. Great. On the night that we're showing at Glasgow Fright Fest in England, actually in Glasgow in Scotland, we got stuck in London because there was a half an inch of snow on the ground. That's a true story. In England, when there's more than half an inch of snow, the entire country freezes and nothing can happen. So I'm sitting there at Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, Steak. And the reason we were able to get into Gordon Ramsay's restaurant is that our producing partner, Brian, his husband, Chris, is one of the editors for Hell's Kitchen and MasterChef, and called because we couldn't get out of London, was like, well, at least let's have a great dinner. So we ended up at this amazing dinner, right? We're sitting around the table, and we are sitting there with Alan Jones, who is the festival director of Fright Fest Glasgow and couldn't get there. So the festival director is sitting across from us, right? And the movie shows, right? The movie screens, and Twitter goes nuts, right? All these tweets of how amazing the movie is. It's incredible. It's so funny, and we can't believe blah, 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 blah. And one of the tweets says, really, Fright Fest? Homophobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitic, transphobic, all this stuff. It says, this is the best Fright Fest can do. And Alan Jones, one of the top critics of all of London, Alan Jones, who runs this festival, turns to me, and he had just made a deal for Fright Fest to distribute Secret Santa. It was the first movie they distributed in England. It was the very first one. And he shows me the tweet and says, dear boy, I think this should be our poster. And I went, I agree with you. Put it right on the poster. Because, again, I don't care what side of the issue you stand on. Stupid is stupid is stupid. And if you don't get that we're saying all of these things are bad. By the way, I love when my partner is gay, and they were calling it homophobic. I'm Jewish. They were calling it anti-Semitic. They were saying it was misogynist. My partner is my wife. I mean, it was like, do you not get this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I love about people now. You know, it makes me I even have asked people this: have people always been dumb, or the internet just made people dumb? You know,
I think what's happened to the internet, and again, look, there's so much joy about the internet. Like, by the way, you were talking about your YouTube channel. Like, I'm listening to this great podcast. I've listened to it before, but I'm re-listening to it for a script that I'm working on called Rabbit Hole that the New York Times did, and the whole thing is about how YouTube helped to create QAnon and help to put us where we are. Mm-hmm. And I go, yep, all of this is true. Absolutely. That said, I probably watch more YouTube now than I watch of regular television, because I go, I want to learn things, and I can actually, and I don't mean political things. I mean, like, I can learn. I taught myself how to cut on an Avid from YouTube.
Right.
I was a guy who learned on a Steenbeck. I was a guy who cut 35 millimeter film together. Yeah. And when Avid happened, I went, I got to learn this. Learned it on YouTube. I learned Adobe Photoshop on YouTube. It's all there for you. Like, it's all there. And that's an amazing resource. Like, that's an extra, you learn how to play the guitar on YouTube. It is an extraordinary thing. So I think the internet has tremendous joy to it and tremendous value. Here's the problem. What the internet did was it told everybody that their voice was as important as everybody else's voice on every single subject. And that's not true. Someone's opinion of medicine who's not spent one day in medical school, your opinion is not as important. I'm sorry. If you're not a scientist, I don't want to hear your thoughts on climate change because you go out and it was chilly this morning. It's like, no, man, like it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to have opinions on every. Look, dude, I made Jason Goes to Hell. Everybody's got a fucking opinion. I got it.
Yes.
And God bless. Like, everybody should have an opinion.
Yeah.
But this idea that my opinion is right because I said it, that's what the internet has done. It has made everybody resilient to change and resilient to ever saying they're sorry. Mm-hmm. When did that happen to all of us?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, a YouTuber that we all love who has, he said that Jason Goes to Hell's his favorite one. Rambo. Shout out to Rambo Rat for Life.
Love that. Big hug and a kiss for you, my friend.
Yeah. He's known as the ranting guy on YouTube. So
which does a lot. And now look, I do get that Rambo Raff has that reputation of hating everything, and now look, and I get it. That's not his intent.
Right.
I will say, I think he's hard to please. Like, I think he is very selective. So, that's what I'll say is his personality. Is like, and he has said like positive thing after positive thing about Jason Goes to Hell, and of course, because it's your movie, you're happy to.
I am.
Yeah. One of the things about him is I often compare him to, like, he's a lot like Gene Siskel or Roger Ebert. Where you don't necessarily agree with him, but at least
the opinion is interesting and and thought out.
Yeah, and granted, it's more like the YouTube way where it's over the top, but yeah. And but no, but Erica, we could seem to talk all day. So why don't you actually finally get to your questions?
Yeah. So right before I get into my questions, going back to Rambo Raph, I disagreed with his review of The Dark Knight Rises, but oh my God, his rant on The Dark Knight Rises was hilarious, especially during his rant, like he called Batman Cancer Man, like because of his raspy voice. I will never forget. I was roaring.
It does seem to be that like every subsequent actor who plays Batman goes lower in their voice. Each one of them, I'm like, at some point, man, you're gonna have to get James Earl Jones just to voice the Batman, because it's not gonna work. You're gonna get another actor who's just like, I can't go that low, brother. I can't do it.
Can't we just do maybe Batman, I don't know, talks in a completely different voice rather than
maybe in a voice like that.
Totally. He speaks just in beaker tones.
Yeah.
Me.
Yes.
I think it'd be awesome.
Or
a great Batman.
Because I'm kind of getting. Listen, I love George C. Scott, but I'm kind of getting tired of George C. Scott Batman.
Oh no! Wait. How about this? Like for Bruce Wayne to disguise his voice as Batman, he does the Beavis and Butthead voice.
Perfect.
I'm like Batman. I have pointy ears.
Awesome. I love it. I'm all in. I'm all in.
All right. So my first question.
Yeah.
Who would you want to play you in a movie about your life?
If I had my druthers, a young Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
If you can, if you're just fantasy casting something.
Yeah.
But I will say this: I've spent most of my life. I was going on a location scout for a movie that I was doing, my remake of I Walk with a Zombie for RKO. And while I was on this location scout, my wife was going to have to stay back here. And my students, all knowing how my wife and I are never apart. Literally, we're just never apart. Her leaving for a doctor's appointment with me not going with her is a rare thing you've well witnessed. So Deb and I are always together for the last 31 years. Wow, amazing. And so,
congratulations.
Thank you. So to keep her company in our house, they bought a standee of Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe standee is still in my garage where I've got one of my offices, and I keep the door open. I like to write with open air. So I sometimes have the door open and the standee just stands there in front of the garage. All of my neighbors think it's me and constantly wave at it, going, "Hey, Adam." And then they're like, "Why is he just staring? Why isn't he moving?" Because it's so lifelike. But for years, the Russell Crowe thing has been like a thing. So a young Russell Crowe I'd be happy with as well, because he's fucking brilliant. But you know what? Look, when I was a little kid, I was a scrawny kid. I was a very scrawny kid up until fifth grade. And I was a bullied kid. I don't know if any of you guys read them, but I write these essays. I put them on Instagram, but Instagram, nobody reads anything. They just look at pictures. But I put them on Facebook, and they're called The Movies That Made Me. And they are essays about my life and about sort of how I dealt with things and how the movies helped to make things better, and help me through things. And, and The Bad News Bears came at a particularly perfect time in my life. It's released in 1976 because it gave me a feeling there were guys like me out there, because I was this scrawny, beat up kid. And by the time I was in sixth grade, I became the bully slayer, which was kind of became like a thing. And I just started beating up all the bullies because I got bigger than everybody quickly. So I think that when you look for people to do a biopic or anything like that, you want to find people that somehow capture the essence of that look. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, probably both. But the person that you're meeting today, this is the same person I was when I was 6.
Yeah.
No difference.
I have somebody in mind.
Who?
I think that, for your Meet the Fableman story that,
Yeah, I love it.
Really should happen, honestly.
Please.
I think Gaten Matarazzo, he was from Stranger Things. He was the one with the really bad teeth. He recently got.
Oh, he's great. He's a brilliant actor. Kid's incredible. He's a Broadway kid. He's amazing.
Yeah,
he's amazing.
Gaten
he's
Matarazzo,
awesome.
Gaten Matarazzo, I could see it.
That's awesome. But again, I was much more sort of elfin-like than him. He's a stronger looking kid than I was.
I mean, he could lose weight.
Oh no, it's not. And again, by the way, he's also, I think, in his 20s now. But that type, I totally get it. I'm just saying, I was okay. You know what? I was a Haley Joel Osment kid. I was that kind of kid. By the way, Haley Joel Osment, one of the best people in our industry. Love him. Amazing guy. Like, just the best.
Yeah.
Just awesome. An amazing person. Yeah, I love him. Love Haley. He's a great kid.
Awesome. That's certainly great to hear. Is because I've heard a lot of horror stories, and now, of course, I am smart enough to understand that not every child star is going to end up, going down a bad rabbit hole. But it definitely is nice to hear about some stories about where that's not the case. So
no, he is. Him and I became friendly when he was 16, just about to turn 17. There was a movie that I'd written for him.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the only movie that he ever attached himself to that he didn't get money for up front. His father read the screenplay and was like, Haley has to be involved in this. And it's actually a movie that I've adapted into a television series that we are selling right now. That is the best thing I've ever put on paper. But it is autobiographical, by the way. It's something that I'm really, really proud of, called Mosaic. But Haley he's a spectacular human being.
Oh, I can imagine, even though I haven't met him. But yeah, before I go on to my next question, I want to say that I totally do get it, how it's like to be picked on. I also was picked on too growing up, and it really can take a toll on your mental health.
Sure.
And then I totally get it, but I just want to say that I find it very inspiring, like how you eventually said, you know what, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'm going to stand up for myself. And so I want to give, big kudos to you.
Thank you.
But yeah, of course, anytime. And even the same thing, to me, that's why I didn't want to go to my 10-year high school reunion at first, because I was like, I don't want to hear about all that crap that happened over 10 years ago. So originally I wasn't going to go, but a friend of mine convinced me to go because my friend said, Eric, this could be your chance, to allow them to not walk all over you. This could be your chance to show them where you are at now compared to where you were then.
Good man.
And then this time, if they try anything, stand up for yourself. I was like, you have a very, very good point. I went in with low expectations. I thought, oh no, this is going to be dumpster fire. And it ended up being way better than I thought. Majority of the people didn't even mention any of the BS that happened in high school. I'm like, great, because that was over 10 years ago. It's really time to move on. There were a few people who still, had issues. I'm like, get over yourself. That was over 10 years ago, and I was 15 at that time.
Can I tell you a quick story that goes along with this? And again, it's not on movies, but it's about life. And I think movies should imitate life. I think it should be an expression of your life. So I went to a high school reunion, much like yourself, and I've gone to most of my high school reunions because I loved high school. By the time I was in junior high, the bullying was over because, again, I was the bully killer. I get to this reunion, and this guy Peter comes up to me, and when he walks up to me, he's still like a shorter guy, not a very tall dude, but. Immediately I have a joy seeing this guy, right? And we weren't even really close friends in junior high or high school, but I knew him the whole time, and he's just a good dude. And so he walks up to me and he says, "Hey, Adam." I was like, "Hey, Peter, how you doing, man?" He says, I'm good. He says, "You're you're a big part of why I'm here right now. And I went, oh no. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, did we have a beef? Did I go out with one of your girlfriends? What happened? Like, I feel like I'm about to have a problem, right? Like I was nervous.
Right.
And I said, why is that, Peter? Like, the next sentence could really be bad. He said, well, remember, I showed up to Westport in 5th grade, and it was already a couple months into the semester. And I said, yeah, I do remember you were a new kid. And yeah, he's like, and I was immediately, he says, you know how Westport can be, cliquey. And I went, yeah, no, I get it. Yes, it was. He said, well, I was really pretty badly bullied when I first got to Westport, and no one would ever sit with me at lunch. I had no friends, none. And he said it was like the beginning of November, and I'm sitting at the lunch table alone, and you walked up to me at the lunch table and said, hey, anybody sitting here? And I said no, and you sat across from me. And we talked. We had a conversation over lunch. And then the next day, you came back and you brought 2 friends. And by the 4th day, the table was full, and I had a whole table full of friends that are all still friends of mine to this day.
Oh,
wow.
And I went, oh, I did do that. Yeah, I was like, yeah, Peter, I remember doing that. I remember it. He said, yeah, and then you asked me who the biggest bully was that I had. I said, I did? He goes, yeah, and I told you, this guy, Jono. I said, oh, I remember Jono. He goes, yeah. And then you went to his house and you kicked his ass. And no one bullied me anymore. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, yeah, I did do that. I did that. Mm-hmm. Cool. And it brought it back for me. And over the period of the next couple hours at that reunion, Peter kept bringing other guys over to me to thank me for that. Now, by the way, I don't say that to make me a big man. No, it's not what I'm saying at all.
No.
What I'm saying is, here was a guy who was 30 years past that moment in elementary school, who was now coming to me and going, dude, that changed my life. Mm-hmm. That act of kindness changed my life. And I never had to fear bullies anymore because somebody stood up to my bully.
Yeah.
And look, here's the problem. We now live in a world that, we don't allow boys to fight each other anymore. We don't allow girls to fight each other anymore. We don't allow anybody to have a physical conflict in school. Mm-hmm. I think that's a mistake. I know it's not a popular opinion. I know.
I agree. I agree with you. I mean, one of the things that I was saying that I think that the school system, instead of wrestling, is a form of martial art. They should actually teach kids martial arts.
You bet.
Because that's how you fight bullies. It sounds counterintuitive, but
the idea of martial arts is to never use martial arts.
Mm-hmm. And so you teach kids martial arts, and you can do competitions. That's fine. You probably have to have school system rules. If a suit, but sure. One of the things that my dad taught me with my bullies, to go make fun of them.
Right.
So
out-bully them. Out-bully them. It's the only thing a bully understands. Bullies don't understand rational thought. Yeah. They don't want to have a conversation with you.
Because my dad said all they're doing is it's smack talk. So out smack talk them, basically.
I in junior high, I remember it, and this is so funny that we're having this conversation, but it's awesome. This is actually more entertaining for me than just talking about Jason Goes to Hell. There's this. There was a moment in junior high where there was a much bigger kid. Oh my God, he was big, and he was a bully and he was a dick, and so we ended up in a war of words, which ended up with meet me on the playground at 2:30 after school. And I did, because I never backed down from a moment, but I was like, I'm about to get my ass kicked. Like, this person is going to beat the shit out of me. And so as we squared up for the fight, right, I said to him, listen, dude, you're going to win this fight.
Yeah.
So you're going to win. I said, but here's the thing. I fight dirty. So I'm just letting you know, at some point, my thumb is going to find your eye, or my teeth are going to find your nose. And yeah, you're going to kick the shit out of me, but I'm telling you in advance, you will be forever changed by this fight.
Yeah.
So before we start, know that going in, I will not fight the way you fight. I will hurt you, and it will scar you for the rest of your life.
Right.
And this guy said, "Oh, you're fucking nuts," and he walked away.
Yeah. Well, there was a guy. At my local bar here one time. There was a guy who, drunk guys, like, oh, I'm gonna fight you. The one guy, how he started to end the fight is he started taking his shirt off, and then he proceeded to take his pants off, and was about to go for his underwear.
I love that guy. Like, I already love him.
Was
That's
about to
amazing.
go for his,
I want to write that guy. That's amazing.
That's amazing.
But then, as soon as he was about to take his underwear off, the guy said, "No, man."
I was like, bro,
but as he's doing this, he's acting like
amazing.
But as he's doing this, he's acting like Curly from the Three Stooges.
Oh, it's genius.
That's amazing.
I'm like, man, you know what? Because they have that, like, oh, I'm gonna fight you, and then as soon as you act more crazier than them, like, no.
Oh, dude, bro, listen. I mean, again, I lived in New York. I got mugged 5 times in New York, stabbed once, and this is in the late 80s, early 90s. But I will tell you, you learn to act nuts in New York, so that if somebody's coming at you, you just start to talk to yourself and like have a fight with yourself in the street.
Right.
And suddenly they're like, oh, no. And they walk away.
Yeah, that's why Michael Keaton is still the best Batman.
100%.
Yes.
By the way, you know why Michael Keaton's the best Batman? Michael Keaton's the only person to know how to play Bruce Wayne.
Yep.
Putting the cowl on is easy. That's nothing. But that man knows how to be Bruce Wayne.
Yep.
It's why I don't care what they ever try to recast, but Robert Downey Jr. will always be Iron Man because he got how to be Tony Stark.
Yep.
Yep.
It's what it is. Learn to play the playboy. Learn to have the sense of humor that makes that attractive. You can. Christian Bale as Batman doesn't work for one glaring reason.
That voice?
No. Okay. The glaring reason for me is that he's always sad. His Bruce Wayne is always, I'm Bruce Wayne, and my parents died, and I'm very sad. Oh, dude, you don't understand Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is fun. Bruce Wayne is a playboy and light on his feet and fun with the women and all. Christian Bale never plays that. He doesn't have a light moment. That's not what Christian Bale does. He's a wonderful actor.
Yeah.
But he's not that guy.
And the same thing, like, even Christopher Reeve, he will always be the best Superman.
Absolutely. Because
100%,
he understands Clark Kent.
Oh, definitely.
He gets it.
And he understood the character of Superman. There's that great interview he did where he said Superman is a friend.
Yes. 100%. 100%.
Eric, you can finally get to some of your questions now.
Right. So, all right. So before I get into my next question, one last thing I want to say about bullies. Eventually, bullies get what they deserve.
Yes.
Case in point, there was a bully I had named Katie back in high school. She bullied me, and she bullied this girl named Marissa. And Katie bullied Marissa for being fat. Then 10 years later, I saw Katie at a swimming pool, and then she got fat. Oh, man. I'm like, that is ironic. That is hilarious. Serves her right.
It's just so sad because most people bully others because of the things that are wrong with them.
Yep, exactly.
That's all it is.
So my next question.
Yes.
So, you worked on Texas Chainsaw 3D. What are your thoughts on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies that came out afterwards?
So the guys who directed Inside did Leatherface, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. No, that's true. Inside is one of my all-time favorite films. I think it's one of the most remarkable horror films ever made. So I love those guys. Those guys and Deb and I have had conversations about what they went through and what we went through, and it's very similar because of the same producer.
Makes sense.
So I'm not going to say anything about Leatherface because I know how that movie was constructed, and I know that those guys made a movie they believed in, and then it got taken away from them and retooled into what we ended up with. I think the movie on Netflix, the most recent Texas Chainsaw movie, I think it is a movie that got made. And it's on Netflix. And it's a movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that says it all.
Sums it up.
The only way I think to really go forward with I'm saying this for a new one though, I would do a prequel, but make it about Grandpa. Set in Texas.
We actually, I will tell you, our original screenplay for Texas Chainsaw had flashback elements that told us the story of the family and of Bubba. And it was really cool because there's a reason for what happened to the Sawyers, and it was also okay. So at conventions, I will every once in a while sign a copy of the original screenplay if it comes to my table when someone gets a copy of it because it's really kind of a special item. The origins of the family of the Sawyers from what we created, and it's why Grandma had that incredible house. Why when Alexandra Dario gets to Texas, she's inherited that amazing house.
Right.
The Sawyers' land is riddled with oil.
Mm-hmm.
And it got into their drinking water through the well. And so generation after generation of Sawyers have been literally poisoned by this water. And it isn't until late into that poisoning that they discover the oil on their land. And it's why the Hartmans, Bert Hartman, the villain of our movie, why he's been trying to burn down the Sawyers, why he's had this Hatfields and McCoy relationship is because he wants their land.
Yeah.
Well, the last shot of our script is that when Bubba comes to the door to greet the people that stole Heather from the family and took her to Chicago and raised her there, her horrible step-parents or her horrible stolen parents, when he greets them with his chainsaw and they scream, the shot was supposed to go up over the house and reveal for the first time, you don't see it the whole movie, and you only see them the last shot, nothing but oil derricks as far as the eye can see. And you suddenly realize, oh my God, that's why they're the way they are and why they have all this money. And so it was, and the story of Jeb, of Bubba, was that, he is tremendously handicapped, but an incredibly sweet boy, that he's not this evil killer. And however, he is so far on the spectrum that he has no friends. He's constantly bullied and beaten and whatnot. So he makes friends with these bullfrogs. It's a specific frog that we found in Texas. And there's a creek, and he plays with these frogs, and these frogs are his friends. They're his only friends. And Bert Hartman, who is Bubba's age, and a bunch of the bullies roll up on him with their bikes, and they run over all the frogs and kill the frogs in front of Bubba. Oh. And you see Bubba turning as each frog dies, as he screams trying to save his friends. You see the rage in him. And so you see the birth of the madness and the anger in this kid in that scene as a child. So we really did have an origin story in the world of Texas Chainsaw 3D. So you had the same kind of structure, but you had this other storyline going on. And again, you know, Lionsgate loved it, loved what we were doing, and they were totally into it. And the producer went off and made the movie and cut all that stuff out, and you know, did what he did.
Well, I mean, at least my idea that I had was a prequel in the 1800s or something. You know, sure. about Grandpa.
Sure.
You know, and I did kind of take. It's ironic. I did take a little bit. You know, obviously, I think that oil fields influenced a little bit by Rockefeller. So
sure.
Because and I'm like, but you know, then I kind of even had it where like they have more of a rivalry with the Hewitts, because I was going to try to kind of combine both timelines as much as you can. So
sure.
But
awesome. But yeah, so have you played any of the Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw Massacre video games?
I played Friday the 13th, and it's great. It's a great game. Great game. It's and again, it's another, you know, look, the greed killed that game, and that is truly, for my money, that's the biggest shame of that lawsuit. Again, I don't blame Victor for the lawsuit at all. Victor's right. I know what happened. I was there. I know exactly what happened. So I work for Sean. I know who Sean is. I know what he does. I got it. I'm not going to give any specifics, but I know it. And and so good on Victor. Well done.
Definitely.
You know, and greed took that video game from everybody, and that game was great. It's great.
Yeah. Shout out to Victor, fellow friend of the show.
He's amazing.
Oh yeah,
amazing. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Great writer, great guy.
Great. He was definitely fun to interview. So
he's terrific.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for answering that. So if you were to come back to Friday the 13th and direct like part 13 or a spinoff, whichever, what would you so would you come back?
Yeah, I would come back. I would come back, and I'll tell you why I would come back. I'd be coming back a different filmmaker. I'd be coming back again. I would advocate for Predator style Jason.
I want to see that.
I do too. I think the fans would want to see it.
Yeah,
that's, and by the way, that's when I don't mind the audience cheering the kills, because then you've got this sort of like mano a mano thing where with, you know, the problem with all the franchises, all of them, is that by the third movie, they're not scary anymore. So we're not frightened of him. So what happens is we turn the villain into the hero.
Right.
So now you have to make the heroes more dumb, more laughable, more hateable, more hissable, so that when we kill them, it's the fun of the kill. So those movies become carnival rides.
Right.
And they're not horror movies anymore. Like, I love when people call it a horror movie. I'm like, no, it's a gore film. It's a film where you're cheering for gore. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. Like, that's awesome. That's a very specific kind of movie. Well done. Right. Great. Everybody should have what they love. But they're not scary. Like, don't tell me they're scary, which is why with Jason Goes to Hell, it was like, I want to add in the element of who goes there, of like, who is Jason, and make this scary again, and also get you to love the people, not the killer.
Right.
You know? So the other thing is, look, you know, no matter what, Sean Cunningham is a producer on Friday the 13th, Part 13. I don't know how important a producer he'll be, but he will be a producer on it. To work with Sean again, but to be in a place where I basically can on day one tell him to go fuck himself, would be tremendously fun.
Oh yeah.
Well, who knows? Who knows? Maybe eventually you can just buy it from Sean.
Wouldn't that be nice? He would never sell it to me. Never. But
the check, maybe the check will be nice for him.
True that. But I will tell you, look, I'll tell you this, guys. Again, look, I hope there's a Friday the 13th Part 13. I hope someone ends up making it. I think it'd be great. I personally hope that they do something so incredibly unexpected with it, but I'm afraid that's not going to happen. I'm afraid that they're going to do same old. And that'll be that. Because I have not been surprised by any of these franchise reboots. None of them are surprising. Right. It's like, oh, you're doing the same movie again. Okay, got it.
Yeah, people said about Halloween 2018 that it's pretty much like a remake / sequel to the original.
Uh-huh.
And with Halloween Ends, yeah, they did do something different, but then, it got the reception that it got.
Well, it's amazing that, we had the same idea basically for Part 13 where Tommy comes back, and I'm like, well, we need to explain why Tommy has been out of the franchise for a long time.
Right.
And I said, well, Tommy was trained by, I don't know, some sort of special forces. And the people were like, well, would they allow Tommy in the military? I'm like, well, I never said the U.S. military.
So, how about Creighton Duke?
Yeah, Creighton. Well, him and Creighton Duke would team up too, and then they both fight Jason. Then you could and then end up bringing. I don't know if I'd really bring in some of the other survivors. Maybe I know fans would want that, but like Tommy and Creighton Duke just have this team where they fight Jason and everything, and make it like that Predator alien style.
Totally.
And then I said that one of the things you're going to need to do is, we know an actor who is 7'7".
Wow.
And I'm like,
wow,
you need to get him to play Jason, because I feel like Jason, if you get a guy who can bulk up and look like a bodybuilder,
wow,
7'7", and then have a 28-inch machete. If you see a guy who's 7'7" having a 28-inch machete, you're gonna be running.
But I got to tell you, look, I think that Kane got fucked on those movies.
Unfortunately, he did, especially with Freddy versus Jason. Kane was saying, "Oh, I like every movie I would do, I would be so excited to eventually do Freddy versus Jason." Mm-hmm. And I did see the documentary they made about him. That's on Tubi, and
good. Very good.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's an amazing documentary.
He's an amazing guy.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And watching that documentary, seeing what him not being in that movie did to him mentally, and I'm like, oh my God, that poor guy.
No, it's not cool, and again, it shows the lack of respect that the Friday 13th franchise has gotten, that that Nightmare on Elm Street never got, that lack of disrespect, that kind of disrespect. It's very frustrating. And the Friday 13th movie was one of the things that helped keep Paramount afloat during the 80s,
which they could definitely probably use now.
They sure could. So yeah, I just think Kane was disrespected. I think the franchise, the fans were disrespected. I just think it's all nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Because they want a bigger dude. Who cares? Put Kane in lifts if you want lifts on it.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Kane's already a tall dude. He's like, what, like 6'3"?
Yeah, he's a big guy.
And he's a pretty built dude. And I'm like, just use camera angles. It's because that. I mean, Tom Cruise actually is a pretty short guy in real life.
Really short guy.
Watching him.
I guess they've never heard of boots.
Never even know.
Right. No, it's offensive. It's offensive.
Definitely.
Kane deserves better.
And plus, there's even ways to camera tricks if you want to make a bigger guy too. He could stand on a milk crate or something.
Yep. Yeah, he sure can.
Exactly. So my next question: what's a big budget franchise you would want to be a part of?
Wow. In horror or any franchise?
Any genre.
Mm. Man, I would love to direct a Daredevil movie.
That'd be cool.
Boy, would I! And by the way, I love the cast they have for the Daredevil series. I would want to use that same group of people.
Cool.
But I am stupid Daredevil fan. Always have been. And I think there's a movie there that like nobody has ever gotten the chance to make. I really do. So yeah, I mean, look, it would be fun to play in that world a little bit. Like I wouldn't want to do like a Doctor Strange is amazing, and I love Benedict Cumberbatch, and I think they did a great job with the first movie. The second one I was not a giant fan of, but I love the first movie. But it's all effects, it's all CGI, and what I like about what they've done with Daredevil so far is I love that it's a quieter show, that the bursts of action are live, that you're watching real people do the stunts. I would love to work in that world. I would love to make a John Wick movie. I'm definitely a fan of that kind of stuff. But I also look, I got to tell you, I actually think there's way more life in the Bourne franchise if you actually do it the right way. And I think a Bourne movie would be amazing if you could get around that the right way. So, look, man, I have an Omen movie that would be insane. That would just be incredible.
Well, I mean, maybe rework the script, that Omen movie, and you can just make an actual good Amityville movie.
Jesus. No, I've been asked to go to the Amityville party. I have been asked several times to go with Leprechaun. I'm good. Deb and I did write a Cabin Fever movie that we love. And that was a shame because the studio that hired us went bankrupt. We did get paid for the script, which is lovely, but that's a great screenplay that we're very proud of.
Yeah, Amityville is definitely an interesting series.
Yeah,
I think they have squoze a bit too much.
58 movies.
It's ridiculous.
And from what I saw on Tubi, one of them's Amityville toilet. Like, really?
That's where you put a lot of the other movies, is into the Amityville toilet. That's
yeah.
So I'm just saying, if somebody could actually make a good Amityville horror movie again, that would be great.
By the way, I will tell you, I thought that the Hellraiser movie on Hulu, while not my favorite Hellraiser movie by any means, I did think it was respectful of what had come from Barker's brain. And I will say that's an area that I think I would love to do a Hellraiser movie. And Deb and I actually almost ended up doing one. We actually pitched Bob Weinstein, and he did not leave the room during our pitch, which is a giant win. If Bob does not leave the room, that's an amazing thing. So he stayed, and he actually said, I really like that first and third act. We're like, okay, good. All right. That's the tough part. Yeah. Good. Love it. And then Clive came in and wanted to do another movie. So that ended. And I was like, got it. Clive wants to do it. Clive should do it. Clive's amazing. Love him. Go do your thing. But I do think the Hellraiser franchise could be fertile ground for some really good movies.
Yeah. The first,
definitely.
Especially the first 3.
Yeah.
Those are wow level movies.
Yeah, they're great.
I mean, probably the closest to like an American, at least the first 2, especially even the second one, is the closest to an American Argento film.
Right. It's true. It's true. But that first movie, man, for a low budget film and really low budget film, that is an astounding thing that he pulled off. It really
some of the best special effects I've ever seen.
It's extraordinary. And I was in college when that first movie came out, and I was working. I did a couple articles for Spin magazine, and they asked me to follow Clive because I had read all of Clive's work up to that point. And I was the only guy there that had. So they put me with Clive, and I spent 3 days tracking him. And then he took me to the actual American first screening, not even premiere, first screening of Hellraiser in New York. And it was amazing. On the second day we were hanging out, because he had realized I'd read everything he'd ever written. He said, bring your books with you next time we talk. I was like, that's a lot of books. He's like, bring them. I was like, okay. So I bring all my books with me. And my entire collection of Clive Barker not only has his signature in them, but he did drawings in every one of my books.
Wow.
And while I was at the premiere of Hellraiser, the writers Skip and Spector were there. John Skip and Craig Spector were there, who wrote The Light at the End. They've written a lot of amazing books together and solo. And so when Clive introduced me, he's like, "Oh, this is John Skip and Spector," and I was like, "Wait a minute, The Light at the End?" And they were like, "You know our names from our book?" I was like, "Yeah, you guys are badass." And I said, "Oh, I wish I had a copy to sign, but I had The Human Condition from Clive in my hand." And so they grabbed my copy of it, and they both signed the back of that book and did doodles because they saw Clive had done all these drawings in my books. And so they did doodles, and Craig said, "Next time Clive has to sign one of our books." But yeah, no, I think the Hellraiser franchise is amazing, and I think you really end up with something brilliant out of that.
I was going to say, have you heard of the video game Clive Barker's Jericho?
Sure have. Got a copy of it.
Which, the game is fine, but I always thought that would be, like, you could make a movie out of that.
You sure could.
It's basically like aliens in the Clive Barker world.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's terrific. Yeah, it'd be terrific. You're right on.
Clive Barker is one of those guys that he should have definitely made more movies, I mean, because, oh my gosh. I mean, I even saw that. I read somewhere on a guy who I know on YouTube, he does like lost scripts.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, like they were saying that Clive Barker, before they even hired Jan de Bont to make the Godzilla movie, they asked Clive Barker to make a Godzilla movie.
That's interesting.
That'd be an interesting Godzilla movie.
It really would. I don't know how you get BDSM into Godzilla, but hey, Clive would figure it out.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I think they even asked him to do a mummy movie at one point, too.
Sure. Why not? All those restraints? Sure.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's say that if Disney offered you to remake My Boyfriend's Back, would you direct it? And who would you cast in said role now?
I'd direct it in a heartbeat. I would want to go back to the original script. So Disney would have to do an R-rated version of the movie, which would be probably the sticking point. But it's what we would have to do because that's what the original script was. It was gory as hell. It had musical numbers. It had some really offensive humor. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Who would I cast now as Johnny? I mean, Finn Wolfhard would be really good casting.
Oh, yeah.
He would be really good. Because he's still awkward. There's still an awkwardness to him that's wonderful.
Right.
So I think that's pretty on-the-nose casting. I think he'd be great.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when I heard that whole thing for Johnny Zombie, the original thing, I'm like, man, a zombie musical, first of all, we don't really get that. And plus, you know what? First of all, that I would love to see that marketing, though. Since it would be Disney, it could be Disney's first R-rated animated feature.
Oh, that could definitely work too. Absolutely, absolutely.
Because to be fair, although you would have to sit there and say, yes, this is Disney's whatever animated feature they're at now, but not for children.
No, it would be the Fritz the Cat of Disney movies.
I would actually love to see them do that. I mean, we all know. I mean, so.
All right. So my last question.
Yes.
Is there anything that you want to plug in?
Look, I've talked about a couple films that we're doing, but I will say there's a few movies that I'm actively making right now that are mine. One is a terrific movie called Orpheus Falling, which is kind of Taken meets hardcore, with a good dose of Taxi Driver in there. It's a very dark movie about a very mild-mannered, very liberal guy whose daughter goes missing. He's a single dad. His wife passed away several years ago, and he's got this beautiful child. And he was a teenage father who did take care of his kid, and now he's a video game. He's a character designer for video games. and just this lovable, sweet man who would never hurt a fly. And the tagline of the movie is how far are you willing to go? And it's about this guy having to descend into a metaphorical hell to find his daughter, and how that changes him, and how we would do anything to find our child, but what are we willing to give up of our soul in order to make that happen?
Wow.
So that's the film that I'm doing right now. I also have a movie called Domestic Terrorist that we're going to be shooting. It looks like in South Africa, but it's for LA, shockingly.
Well, they do that now.
The money is coming from South Africa, and I've made movies there before, so okay. But we are that movie is about a fellow who committed crimes in Florida, a young guy who committed crimes in Florida with his brother and his father, all to raise money for the Aryan Brotherhood, to create havoc and to stop Democrats from getting into any kind of power. And the last job they pulled, his brother was killed, so his father sent him away, told him to run. And he is hiding in Los Angeles as an Uber driver, because in LA, when you're behind the wheel of a car, you're anonymous. They're just, everybody's in a car. Yep. And the movie takes place during the pandemic. And he is in LA to do one very, very bad thing. He's there for a reason. And he, very much by accident, picks up a young black woman in his car. But by accident, he doesn't mean to do it, and he does, and instantaneously falls madly in love with this woman and doesn't know why. And the movie is about the reckoning with himself, about his own attitudes and his own hatred, and whether her involvement in his life will stop him from doing the thing that he has come to Los Angeles to do. And it's, a race against the clock. So of this guy's heart. So it's, so it's very political, and very much about, the unreasonableness of our hatreds, and how we let those hatreds not only guide us, but destroy our own world. So I'm working on that. And then I've got a movie called The Wickedness of the Butterfly that is a cross between La Femme Nikita and Scanners.
Wow.
Wow.
That was awesome. Definitely as soon as those movies come out, I definitely will be sure to check those films out.
I love it. Hey, by the way, one last plug, and we talked about it slightly at the beginning, but I got to tell you, so 4 years ago, we ran a Indiegogo campaign for The Hearts of Darkness, the making of the Final Friday. And it was a movie I did not want to make. I didn't want to make a documentary about my experiences on Jason Goes to Hell because of Sean, because of the pain I would have to go back and experience again talking about it. But I have to tell you, I wouldn't have done it if the fans had not wanted it, which is why we went to Indiegogo. It was like, look, if the fans pay for it, I'll do it. If the fans really want it, then they'll raise enough money and I can go make the movie. And again, not myself, my partners, we didn't make one dime. None of us got paid. We just spent the money to make the documentary. And because 3 months into production, and we were killing it, we were ready to be done in a year, the pandemic hit us, and it was like, oh shit. And people don't understand, like, people outside of LA don't get, like, Los Angeles wasn't shut down for 6 months or a year or 2 years. We were shut down for 2.5 years. We were shut down.
Yeah.
And we're going to people's homes to photograph them, and people are like, I don't know if I feel safe with it. We held some of our interviews in people's backyards, and we're wearing masks outside just so that we could get some interviews. So it took forever. I have to say, the movie is not a Sean bashing movie at all. It's not. I didn't want it to be, nor did the director. The director of the movie is Michael Felsher, who I don't know if you guys know him, but he was George Romero's personal documentarian for the last 15 years of his life. Michael's done over 400 documentaries. He's like, if you own any Blu-rays, you own some of Michael's work.
So he's the guy that was on. He's been on Dead Pit show before, Dead Pit Radio.
Yes.
Yes, that's him. Okay,
Yes,
I know him.
He's amazing. He's just a beautiful, sweet, lovely man. And Michael really had a vision for the film. I believed in his vision for the film, and we really dove into something remarkable. Not only that, but my best friend from when I was 14 years old is a 9-time Emmy-nominated editor. He came on board to edit this movie. He was an original member of Skeleton Crew when we were 15. And he is now the editor for Skeleton Crew. It's the most amazing thing.
Wow. That's amazing.
And he cut this movie. So between the editor and the director, they really crafted what this film is. I have to tell you, it is a love letter, not to just Jason Goes to Hell, but to the spirit of filmmaking, to the family you make when you make a movie, and to the horror community. It is such a loving embrace of horror films in general. And I will tell you, so the movie is, feature film length. It'll be about 115 minutes around there, under 2 hours.
Yeah.
The disc is over 4 hours of footage of stuff. It's going to be an amazing piece of material for the fans.
Well, it looks like
amazing.
Well, it looks like the three of us have a definitely a future episode of Sit Down by the Fire.
Love it.
Here.
Love it.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
And we'll have a watch party, and then I guess we'll have to review the special features too. But definitely have our longest podcast ever.
It really, guys, I'm telling you, it's one of those movies that like you get choked up by the end of the movie. Like you're watching a movie about the making of Jason Goes to Hell, and you're like, God, that's a really nice story. I mean, it's like, who thought, But it's kind of beautiful. We interview a lot of fans. We also interview haters of the movie.
Yeah. Hey.
Oh, interesting.
You know what? There's a new tagline. If you don't cry at the cry,
right,
you're a sissy.
We didn't do our job.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you're the sissy, or something like that.
Yeah, I love it.
Just quote that. In it.
Totally.
If you don't cry, you're a sissy, or something like that, or something. Like films.
That would be amazing. But yeah, I do want to say this. We definitely did go on longer than we were in.
Well,
and I definitely do want to be courteous of Adam's time.
Thank you. I appreciate that, guys.
So yeah, of course, anytime. But I definitely do want to say thank you so much, for your time, and we definitely had a lot of fun.
Awesome, guys. This has been absolutely terrific.
I love watching him in interviews just because you talk a lot and everything, and that's completely fine. And but you're a storyteller. We can tell. So
thank you.
And so yeah, Minotaur, take us out.
Take us out, man.
Hold on a second.
Technical difficulties. God love it.